recording here again. My name is Megan Penley Pickett, and I am a coach with Heartland, and also have the honor of doing these different types of trainings and things like that as well. And I am joined by my co-coach, co-host, Coach Mark over there.
That's easy for you to say.
It was easy in my brain. It was not easy to get out there. So it is 2 after the hour. I'm going to give people one more minute. 7:03.5 usually is about the sweet spot for people to remember that they had this and get all their technicalities worked out. So so you all are in the right place. Everybody's muted, which is really great for the presentation. Oh, I said that, but I think we're good. I think we're gonna get started. So thank you so very much again for joining us for this webinar this evening. The way that it's gonna work is Coach Mark and I are gonna present the materials. We're gonna share our screens that have some PowerPoint for those of you who haven't been on one of these webinars in the past. Excuse me. It is, that's what we do. We share some information via PowerPoint, give you our take on things, can definitely answer questions. It's usually easier for everyone concerned if we answer questions at the end. But if something's really burning, please feel free to raise your hand or to unmute yourself and ask those questions. But we'll definitely leave time at the end of the presentation for questions. And so you can do that one of two ways. One, you can unmute yourself, so everyone's muted right now. It's amazing how much background noise comes through and we're not even aware, especially at my house because it's spring break. So my kids are home a lot and they're very loud. So hopefully we may have to mute them as well. And so you can unmute yourself and ask your question live, because more likely than not, if you have a question, someone else on here has a question and it's helpful for them as well. Or you can put your question into the chat box. So you should be able to do that, whether you are joining us from a computer, a tablet, or from your smartphone. You should be able to do that. So I think that's about it. So we will do our best to answer your questions, and away we go. Let me share my screen here. And I will minimize myself because that's super distracting. So again, thank you for coming to March's Parents' Night. And so what we're really focusing on is preparing for college selection at all grade levels. So we'll get into what that focus is right now. So a little bit about our program. Some of you may be new. This may be the first time you're on one of our Parents' Night webinars. Maybe you're an enrolled family. Maybe you've been with us for years. Maybe you're thinking about enrolling with us. So we really like to start all of our webinars with just kind of a brief overview of what our program is. And at the Heartland Institute of Financial Education, specifically with our college coaching program, we believe that every student deserves a coach. And what we really mean by that is any student that is on that educational journey, we believe that we can work with them, that they deserve some of that guidance, because we don't know what we don't know, and students and families don't know what they don't know. I'm not a first year, let me take that back. I'm a first generation college student 20 some years ago, and we didn't know a lot of things, right? We didn't know what to ask. And everything worked out, but there would have been a lot less anxiety, right, if we're able to have some of those conversations and thinking about that ability to plan. So we really focus on what steps to take during high school, dependent upon the student. We have students who join our program, and I'll get into that in a second, who are out of high school. So that bullet point may not apply. And really looking at choosing the best major and the best college, which is really what we're going to talk about tonight. Walking through and partnering with that college application process, exploring and applying for every possible source of financial aid, whether that's federal or state aid, private loans, grants, school-specific aid, those types of things. And then finalizing the results, what to do. And we just did a webinar on this last month, is once you get accepted, what happens now, right? Looking at those comparing the different financial aid packages, making sure that it's still the best fit for the student to attend that school, potentially going through the reevaluation letters, which really refers to basically, can I please have some more money? I would really like to go to this university, but there's still a significant financial gap that I need some help in covering. And so we walk you through a process and have some templates that help you to get some reevaluation, at least from another set of eyes from the financial aid office or the Office of Admissions. And so really, and then kind of verifying that everything is received so you can get to those college acceptances. So this is really where our program is. A couple of bullet points that are not on this PowerPoint in front of me. I had too many P words running through my head, which is never good because my last name is actually Penley Pickett. So I should be used to those words, but PowerPoint tripped me up tonight. A couple of the points that are not on our PowerPoint is really also, and I'll talk about this when we get into it later, or when we bring it up later, but is really looking at, yes, we're looking at what's the best major for that student, but that's really tied to what are the end goals, the careers that the career fields that student is interested in, that then is going to correspond to that major. So that's something that I'll need to add to this slide for future, but something that we really wanted to point out about our program. And our students, like I mentioned before, they really can be, over several generations sometimes, but we want to work with everyone who wants to pursue an educational dream. Whether that's high school students, so our program, you are eligible to join the program midway through your 8th grade year, which is this point in the year, basically that spring semester, January on, of 8th grade year through high school. So through the 12th grade, through graduation, that's what encompasses our high school students. And obviously there's that transition time between high school and college students before a new designation is added on there. And then we have our current college and university students, so students who are already enrolled. We provide guidance while they're there in conjunction with what they're receiving on their own campus, making sure that they have made the right decision. And if they want to change majors, if they want to change career fields or change potentially even institutions, we can walk them through that process, working with them to ensure that they only have to make those changes a minimal number of times, because the more that we change those things, the more time and money that results in for the student and family. And then we also work with adult and returning students. So these may be folks who have started a degree and took time off for whatever various reasons. Maybe they haven't started a degree and they're being given an opportunity either in time or potentially money from an employer to go back for a degree. So again, we are going to work with anyone who is on that educational journey. So, excuse me. Here's the area of our focus for our webinar this evening, is really the college selection overview. And when we're talking about selection, it's more looking at which schools are we looking to apply to? How are we building those lists? How do all of our steps inform one another? And really looking at that, preparing for college selection from 8th grade to 10th grade. So your 8th grade year through sophomore year, what that junior year looks like with narrowing down selections, and then the final selections that senior year. We're going to touch a little bit on kind of how to make those final decisions, but that's a little bit different than how to kind of create the list of where we're going to apply. What I think is really important to keep in mind as we walk through this, Coach Mark and I may say some things that are specific to a grade level. You know, in 9th grade or 10th grade, you're going to be focusing on, you know, X, Y, and Z. Please know that if a student chooses to start the program later, if they're starting in their junior year, starting in their senior year, starting after college, a lot of these pieces are going to apply to them. The coaches are well versed in how our program works. How do we make that unique to our each individual students that come into the program? So we are going to be talking a little bit in both general and specific terms tonight, but the specificity will come in when we're really talking about this is our focus for each of the years. But know that our coaches will, again, work with those individual students to make sure that if they're coming in later than that point that we're talking about tonight, then those students get caught up. We can fast track them based on their experiences, based on what they're looking for from the program, to make sure that they're still getting what they need from the program. So wanted to put that out there. So really with our program, we start with the end in mind. Again, at whatever point a student is joining our program, we're going to start with the end in mind. And the end really is what that career field is going to be. And the way that we do that is through our assessments. And we use a platform called Cooter. It's a very, very rich site. It's got a lot of information on there. The piece that I want to really focus on tonight are the assessments. There's a suite of 3 different assessments, and they focus on career interest, skills, confidence, and work values. And these 3 assessments, this is on an empirically based assessment program with over 75 years of research. These assessments aren't meant to tell you what you should be doing or will be successful in doing. Instead, what they do is give you some focus so you can begin your research for your career options. So this is what we always tell students, right, is that these assessments are going to come back. The way that it's set up, very, very briefly, is that there are 16 different job families that we have access to. And it's important to know that students have access to all 16 of these families. They're going to get their top 3 and their top 5 sent to them, which gives them a very targeted place to start their research, to start looking at what career exploration they can do, what's the job outlook for that particular career, what's the day-to-day look like for people who are in that field, what's the education, which is really how it ties into what we're talking about tonight. Well, what's the education necessary? What's the salary outlook? Those pieces. It gives them a targeted place to start. When students, really people in general, have too many options, it creates an overwhelm. We call it paralysis by analysis. It's too many things to look at, so we don't know how to dive in, and so sometimes we don't. So these assessments and the results that students are given are really that benchmark to give them a place to start from. Coach Mark, am I missing anything so far or anything you want to add?
Sorry,
That's
I figured
okay.
out how to unmute myself here. No, you're doing well. You're doing well. Keep going.
Okay, great. Thank you. It's always fun for those of you who get to join us for our parents' nights. The Tuesday night is always the first time the coaches get to work together on some of these pieces. So you get to see the dress rehearsal, if you will, and we have it very polished for Thursday. So if there's any questions that you have based on what we're talking about, please let us know as well. And so really those assessments really set us up. And by us, I mean the partnership between the student and the coach for exploring and deciding on a major and careers, right? So those assessments are going to give, again, both the top 5 and the top 3, obviously encompassed in that top 5, but kind of dependent upon where that student's capacity is for information. We'll share with them some different levels of that. It's going to be tied to their assessment results. And so again, we're going to look at the tasks required for those careers, the education, the salary. We also then, in addition to the online research that we have students do to see what resonates with them, what do they enjoy about, what do they not like, what do they want to find out more about when it comes to careers, we also guide them, and again, this is going to be a little bit age-based, but we guide them on how to get very important hands-on experience. So I think we're going to go into that in a little bit as well. But then once we start identifying what some of those career fields are that the student is interested in, we want to make sure that they are choosing a major that supports that career choice. So, you know, if a student, let's say, wants to go into nursing, majoring in music probably is going to hold them back from getting to that end goal as quickly as possible. There may be ways to bring interests like music or literature or arts into a minor or a focus while they're at school, but we want to make sure that that major is there that's going to get them to that end goal being the career that they are interested in, or setting them up for the next degree that they may need to get based on what that career requires. So where we really start with students, and again, whether they're in 8th grade or anywhere beyond, is that we have them start with creating a large interest list of schools. And this is based on anything, right? We just want them to create a list, and it can be a big list. We don't want students starting in, in 8th, 9th, 10th grade, starting with a small list. We want them to explore. We want them to, and we'll get into in a second what that really means and what some of those factors are, but it's really important to not narrow our focus so early on. That comes later in the process. That comes middle to end of junior year and into senior year when we're when we're going to decide where we are applying. But we want students to think big. Maybe it's in a different part of the country. Maybe it's someplace close. Maybe it's a place that they heard about or saw a commercial about, or their cousin's dog walker's mom is, has gone to school there and wears all of her gear. You never know what, kind of makes it possible for students to really be thinking about that and what puts a school on their radar. But we want them to put it on their list. So it gives us a place, and it gives the student a place to start doing research based on some factors that I'm going to get into in a moment. Coach Mark, at any point in time, if there's anything you want to add, please feel free to jump in, just in case. So some of the considerations that we really have students think about when choosing a school, so this is going to come in not so much in that big creation of the list, right? That list is, we want lots of schools on there: big, small, medium, close, far, expensive, less expensive. I don't think we have any schools that fall under the cheap marker any longer. But from expensive to less expensive, maybe manageable financially. But we want that list to be big. So then we can guide students on the research process. And some of the things that we really have our students research is on the screen in front of you. Rank, not as much, but that sometimes is important to students and families. If rank is one of the things that students and families are considering and really thinking about, that will be a conversation point that the coach has. What about an Ivy League school is important to you, right? What about a Big Ten or a Pac-12 or whatever that might be? Why is that important to you? And we can kind of dig down and figure some of that out. It may end up being that rank is important to them, to that student and family. Oftentimes, what comes along with it is that so-and-so, that student had someone who went to school there, or it's, a Harvard or a Yale who have a 6% acceptance rate. With thousands and thousands and thousands of applications. So that may be a school, it may not be the school. So we'll talk through that, looking at public or private and what does that mean, if religious affiliation, where it's located, the enrollment, what it costs, what's the average class size, what's the student body look like on campus, what's the environment on campus, the number of men or women that are on campus. Maybe it's a single sex institution. What's the diversity ratio look like on campus? What does that composition look like? And what's the social life on campus? That is a part of what we want students to be thinking about when they're on campus, because yes, we want them to be in a place where they are going to be able to focus on that major that's going to get them to that career goal, but without an environment where they're going to thrive, which may be quiet or loud or big or small or anything in between. We want to make sure that they are going to thrive, so they will continue out and graduate from that institution.
just to pop in and give you a little bit of a rest, is just some definitions, perhaps. You know, when we talk about size, a small school, you know, size is determined by how many students are attending that school, and this can include full-time, part-time, together. A small school would probably have 5,000 or smaller. A medium school would have probably 5,000 to 15,000, and a large school would have over 15,000. So what does that mean to a student? Well, a large school will have a wealth of majors. A large school might have a very unique major that the student is wanting to pursue. A medium school could have that. A small school may or may not on it. But then you also look at the other things that are involved. Students are going, even, you know, it was always the hope, even for commuter campuses, that, which is one that I was at, that students would not just come in, do their class, and go home, because there are many other activities that colleges will have, you know, clubs. I mean, you know, in club, there could be a club based on ethnicity that could promote partnership, or the club could be on a particular subject, so that, you know, if you were really passionate about biology, a biology club on the campus would be a great thing, because there you get to sit outside of class and chat with people who have like minds as you. The things you have to be wary of too is, in the large schools, there's a large opportunity for social interaction, and that can be a good thing. That might be a bad thing if you're neglecting your studies. So, you know, sometimes people like medium schools. Then there's you know, so these are all good questions. All the things on this list here, when students say, what should I be looking for? Yeah, the rank, is it important? What we used to tell, I was doing somewhat minor career counseling, not really, I would always refer them over to that center, but you know, you'd sit there and say, remember, your bachelor degree is going to be one line on your resume eventually. So what else did you do while you were in school, or what else did you do in life? So there's just a few things that way to think about as you're looking for them. And yeah, I mean, you know, the large list is good, but, you know, narrowing it down using this criteria. And we have questions, you know, that when students say, you know, and I used to love, you know, I'd follow along on some of the campus tours. And you could tell the prepared students and the unprepared students. The unprepared students would look at the person leading the tour, and generally those students, those leading the tour, were work studies, so they were students that leading it. And the question might be, do you like the school, man? No, I'm just doing this tour for funsies and make some money. Sure, they like the school. So you want to dig a little deeper in the questions that you ask. What, was the teacher to class size ratio, and and some of those questions about what clubs, etc. So, okay, rested?
Rested. Thank you very much. So some of the focuses some of the foci, the focus is really for 8th grade to 10th grade. And again, regardless of when the student is going to come into the program, we're going to talk about these things. Again, they may be a quicker conversation from an 11th grader to an 8th grader, or a returning student to a 9th grader. So keep that in mind. But in general, this is where our program really starts. And again, it's those first steps. So it's creating a large list of schools. No list is too big to start from. We are not going to be applying to 100 schools. I don't think that's a very good recommendation on our part. I'll get into what that recommendation is here in a little while. But to start, to always feel like you have options. options in researching, options in finding out what maybe some of those niche organizations might be, or those niche majors might be. There really are some interesting things that are out there that students, it sparks their interest. And whatever sparks your interest, put it on your list, because you don't want to limit yourself at the start. It doesn't mean that when you start this list in 8th and 9th and 10th grade that you'll be applying to all of these schools, but it does give you a place to start. Can you tell I'm pretty passionate about that piece? I want people, especially students, to feel like they have options to start from, because then as they start taking those away, they can do that with intentionality. And so that really makes a difference when they start making their decisions. If they feel and believe that they have made a conscious and intentional decision to not apply somewhere because it didn't meet their criteria. And finances and location usually are two of the major things that play into that, not always. But if that's a part of the intentionality, we want them to feel really positive about that. And as students start to explore careers through some of that hands-on experience that we've talked about, whether that's informational interviews, job shadowing, internships, or jobs, it kind of goes up in that hierarchy. But as students get more experience, as they start volunteering in, building their extracurricular activities, meeting more people, maybe getting some more intentional focus in a potential career area, doing more of that research, then they start to update that list. They may be adding schools. They're more likely than not going to be removing schools at a higher rate, and maybe adding, a handful of schools here as they say, oh, now I'm interested in another major, right? Like biochemistry is what I really thought I wanted to do, but now I want to do music. It's usually the other way around, but you never know. You just don't know what's out there. And so really, as we start looking at, okay, what careers do we want to look at, and how do we get that through the majors? Because to Coach Mark's point, he's absolutely right that the education is extremely important as a foundation, and it's one line on the resume. So what are you going to do pre-college and then during college or university, whichever term you prefer, or whatever the school's designation is? What are you going to do to round out your experiences? We want to make sure that when students are kind of landing on a career field that they're interested in, and then the subsequent major, which then subsequently drives the school choices, we want to make sure that they have a fairly good feel for that, so they don't get into their first or second year and say, oh my gosh, I didn't realize, I had a nursing student who was in nursing and then realized kind of in year 3, like, I don't like the sight of blood. Well, that probably would have been helpful, right? This is when I was in a different role and I was not coaching them on college selection, but when I was on the extracurricular side of things. And really, wouldn't that have been a helpful idea for this student to have explored early on, so then they would have had the opportunity to look at other majors? So, that type of thing. And it's really important to remember that each step builds on the step before it. Again, we can condense these. They will still be meaningful. They will still have impact on the student. It doesn't necessarily have to take the 2.5 years. I always believe that when students are starting in the 8th and 9th grade, they're really buying themselves time. They're starting the process at a place where there's a lot less pressure to decide where they're going to apply. What are you going to major in? What are you going to do next? Adults always want to ask students, what are you going to do next? And we're always surprised when students are like, I don't know. I was just going to go play video game with my friend, or I was going to go to gymnastics, or, that type of thing. And so when we're able to help students early on in the process, when there's a lot less pressure for actually making the final decisions, and we're in the exploration phase, that when we get to that final decision-making phase, the students feel like they have really bought into it, that it's really, that they're very intentional about the choices that they're making. And so a little bit, and you can tell that Coach Mark and I our program is built on this, and we're pretty passionate about it, but we want students to research schools. I apologize, this looks a little bit smaller than it did. I have a much larger monitor that I created this on, so get out your readers, folks. But really, this is that research that we were talking about. So really walking students through those criteria that we were talking about earlier. And one of the very, very best ways to research schools, now you're not going to do this, it's not realistic for all 100 schools, let's say, on that list. But we really want students to visit. If they are schools that are close, if they're within driving distance that seems relatively easy to get to, that doesn't incur a lot of cost, or maybe it does incur cost and that's not a factor, take a tour of the campus. Talk to students, faculty, staff that go to school there, that work there, that teach there. So you can go when most schools are going to have kind of formal tour times. Oftentimes they run those on a daily basis. If it's a smaller school, they may run that a couple of times a week, or you may be able to schedule that. They'll have that information available on the website for their admissions office, or you can just give them a call. What I have found is that at colleges and universities, we believe that our websites are very easy and user-friendly, but only if you work or go to school there. If you're on the outside like the rest of us, sometimes it takes a little extra navigation. So I'm a big fan of just picking up the phone and saying, hey, what are your tour programs like? And also, if it is close enough to do some of that informal research, go and walk around campus when it's not a formal tour time. That's a really great way to get a feel for who's hanging out outside. Maybe that's important to you. What does the passing periods look like? That much, or that type of thing. You can ask questions like Coach Mark was saying. We really do help students prepare. We have a list of questions that they can take and kind of cherry pick from, or they may have some things that are really important for them and their family. And so we want you to ask those questions. It gives you an opportunity to talk face to face in person with a financial aid officer. Oftentimes you can do that over the phone. Some of those offices are also moving to video conferences, much like this webinar would be, or Skyping or something along those lines. We also want students to start doing that research online, finding out what's the class size, those types of things, and then going to visit and seeing how that actually feels. A lot of times what that online research is going to yield is that students are less interested in some schools and more interested in other schools, which is then going to create that sub list of the schools that they want to visit. Some of our schools are getting pretty savvy out there, understanding that it's not likely that students are going to be visiting all of the schools that they may be interested in. And so they're starting to create a lot of marketing pieces and materials. So you can take a virtual tour of the campus. You potentially could even call, the student life department at the college or university and see if you can find out what types of activities are going on, that type of thing. You can even call the department that you plan to major in. You can do this whether you're on campus or not. Speak to a professor about the program that you're interested in, and find out how much it will actually cost. We call that the net cost of what the school is. And we want you to document your experience, because what happens is, and so that's documenting all of the data, if you will. What's the average entrance exam? What's the ratio? What's, all of those pieces. But we also want you to document how you felt, because that's a piece of it. That's where you're thriving. That is, as a little itty bitty science lesson, that gut feeling that we have is our limbic brain that doesn't have access to speech, giving our body an indication of how we're feeling. If we get really excited, right, then we can start articulating, I was really excited when I talked to so-and-so in this major program, right? Or it just didn't feel right for me when I walked on that campus. So we want you to start collecting that data as well, so you can go back, because sometimes that gets lost in the mix of everything else that our students are going through in 8th and 10th grade, because they're still playing sports and hanging out with friends and being someone's son or daughter or brother or sister, and all of those, and going to school. Let's not forget high school in there. And so the college selection process can sometimes get put to the side, or we can forget those feelings So we want to make sure that they are documenting that as well. So like we alluded to or have said directly, right? So junior year is really where it's leading up to deciding where students are going to apply. And so I know that we as coaches really encourage our students that by the start of summertime, they should have that list narrowed down, because students are going to have the ability, dependent upon the school, but sometime between July and October, again, depending on the school, that they can start applying for those colleges and universities leading into their senior year. Sorry, I don't want to get too confusing on my timeline here. So junior year is the year that we are finalizing where we want to apply, because that application process can begin as early as summer between junior and senior year. And so really we want, again, our students to decide by the end of their junior year where they're going to apply. And we at Heartland suggest that our students apply to 5 to 6 schools in general. Now that's a suggestion. Everybody is going to make their own personal decision on that. Some students are going to apply to 15 or 20 schools, and some students are going to apply to 1 or any number kind of that runs the gamut. This is really where we believe that students are going to kind of have the best bang for their buck. But again, it's a personal decision, and we'll support that, because these are the students, they get to decide where they're going to apply, because they will then eventually have to decide where they're going to go. So we suggest 2 stretch schools, and these are schools that you would love to go to, but it may be a stretch for you to get in. It may be a stretch based on finances. It may be a stretch based on some of the admissions pieces, maybe a GPA or a entrance exam or something along those lines. But maybe you hit 2 out of 3 or 4 out of 6 of their points and you really want to give it a shot. Great, let's do that. We want to support your dreams. We want to make sure that we're doing that in an intentional way. We want students, or we suggest students apply to 2 to 3 great schools. And so these are schools that you would really like to go to, that they offer the major that you need, they offer what you're looking for in the school, referring to those factors that we were talking about, those research points from earlier, and you meet the admissions requirements and know you'll be happy there for the next 4 years, right? So it hits finances, it hits the major, and it hits the environment piece. And then we suggest that students apply to 1 safe school. And this is a school that you really should have no problem getting into. It may not be ideal, but it does have your major. So this is what a lot of people want to call their backup school. This may be the school that's down the road. It could actually be anywhere. We want to make sure, obviously, that you can afford it and that it has your major. So your backup school should not have your major, because that defeats the purpose. But it's really where it becomes a safe school is really when it comes into that environment piece. This may require that maybe you're living at home and you wanted to live on campus. Or it's a smaller school and you wanted a larger, or flip-flop that. So this is our general recommendation for students. Again, it's going to be a personal decision for them to apply to any number of schools, but really to take it down from that large list that we began with down to this 5 or 6 schools. And then senior year, it's the final decision. So we've talked through, so now we're kind of deciding where we're going to, we've decided where we're going to apply at the end of junior year. And at the beginning to middle of senior year, those applications, almost all of them, now it's gonna vary by school, it is going to be finished by December or January of senior year. And so we are now currently in the time of year where students are going to start getting their acceptances. And so now they have the big decision of where to the college that they are selecting to attend. And so we as coaches partner with them. We help them review their acceptance letters, review their financial aid packages. And so this is taking into account, again, federal and state aid, as well as any private scholarships, any loans that the students are interested in, and then really what those particular schools are offering, and looking at that. What's the net cost going to be for a particular institution? And helping to remind the student and family all of those factors that went into narrowing down that large list to the selection of where they were going to apply. Really looking at cost, major, and fit. Fit is really that environment piece. And we can walk you through the negotiation process if necessary. That negotiation is primarily going to come in when it comes to the financial aid package. Again, it's a little bit of that reevaluation that I was referring to earlier, saying, you know, Megan would really love to go to Ball State University, which is where I have a degree from. She would really love to go to Ball State University, and there's still a financial gap. Are there other scholarships I can apply to? What is a way that I can help bridge that financial gap, right? And so oftentimes colleges will respond favorably with that, not always, but if it's a school that a student really wants to go to and really hits that major and that fit, it's always, always, always worth asking. And then once you get to where you have the final packages, if you will, the coach can help you make a determination to what is best for you being the student and your family. Coach Mark, anything on, I think we're coming to the end here, so anything on what we've talked about on the selection process for colleges?
Absolutely. A few things on it. You know, the advantage of starting in the 8th, 9th grade is if there is at that point a real desire to go to a very selective college, and you do your homework on that college, you now have set the bar. In other words, you know, we get seniors going, I want to go to Harvard. Okay. Did you ace the SAT? Well, no. Do you have like a 3.8, 4.0 GPA? Well, no. Are you willing to invest 40 hours in the application process and pay the amount? Well, I don't know. It's a lot of work. Well, there's the Harvard application process. However, if in the 9th grade they say, yes, I want to set as a goal, you know, which is sometimes difficult for 9th graders, but I know some that'll do it, you know, then they know that goal and they can work toward that. Another thing to be aware of is that colleges now, you know, some parents just drill into that, get that GPA up, get that SAT up. I don't know if, Megan, did you see that the University of Denver now is not requiring the scores?
Yes.
The SAT scores?
Yep.
And a lot of the students, one of the first, when I meet them in a Zoom conference for the first time, I say, are you familiar with the word holistic? And you know, holistic meaning looking at the student as a whole. Did they do volunteer work, and did they do community service, and did they write a good application essay, and on and on and on. They want to know, is a student more than somebody who got up in the morning, went to school, did good work, and came home and went to bed? They want more than that. And they know that some students are not adept in the assessment process, but are still good students. So, and you will see this on these college websites. We look at students from a holistic standpoint. It's right there on their website. So getting that student engaged in 8th and 9th grade. You know, I get some 11th and 12th grade, well, what have you done for community service or volunteer work? And they're like, well, why should I do that? It's like, yikes, you know, and you know, that volunteer work should be from a passion standpoint. Don't worry about money initially. Don't let that stop you from applying, because You know, you never know. I mean, this one student said, like, I got, you know, accepted to DePaul, and I got $10,000 scholarship for each year. I'm like, wow. And then I went on DePaul's website and found out that it was $40,000 a year in tuition. It's like, oh, that's why they offered him 10,000. But that whole negotiation process is good. I have another student now that mom sent me an email and said, well, you know, should we wait till we make a selection of college before we start our negotiation process? And I said, well, that's sort of like saying to the car salesman, yes, I'll buy that car. Can you do any better on price? Well, you've just committed. So, you know, while you can certainly ask out of the blue, if you have some negotiating clout in the form that, you know, my daughter Megan really wants to come to your school, and that's really her number one choice. However, her number two choice offered her more money than you, and, you know, and so there's a little bit of a gap, and, you know, and other times too, some simple things like, if you apply to a school where you're at the lower end of that average of acceptance, then, and you try and negotiate, then they're going to go, well, yeah, maybe we could do a little bit. But if they say, you know, average GPA is 3.2, and you have a 3.6 or 3.7 GPA, and you apply to that school, then they're sitting there thinking, ooh, you know, we'd sort of like that person with a 3.7 because they're going to fit well into the mix. Now you start the negotiation again with a little bit of clout on it. So you know, and there are, you know, they don't call them discounts, but sometimes those colleges will give you, well, we'll give you the dean's scholarship of, you know, X number of dollars a year, and you sit there going, ooh, that might just work with that amount of money, even though their tuition is $40,000 a year. If they offer me, you know, $20,000 or $25,000, I might be able to swing that, versus if they only offer me 10, and so on. So there's a myriad of ways. Wish it was a simple process, but hey, that's what keeps Megan and I employed. So, you know, because we've been there, done that, and you
right.
know, we've been to the dance, and we have the T-shirt,
right,
if you will. So there's my take.
Awesome. Thank you. Thank you very much. So we are at the end of our presentation piece. We do like to end with this, making sure, for those of you who are not aware, but we, you know, obviously we work with the Heartland Institute of Financial Education, and it is a national 501c3 nonprofit that is really founded upon the idea of making college affordable, or helping students and families find that affordable college for their students and their families. So we like to put that out there. If after our presentation tonight there are still questions that you have, or want some clarification on something that we may not get to this evening, here's the email that you're going to send it to. And if you want me to repeat this when we pop out of here, I can do that. But it's HIFECPP, which stands for the HIFE College Planning Program. We've had a name change since our email was on here, at hife-usa.org. So it's HIFECPP at hife-usa.org. You can give our office a call at 303-597-0197, or you can find some information about our college coaching program at our website at www.hife-usa.org. So we have about 10 minutes or so. I certainly do not need my video on me. We have about 10 minutes or so for any questions. So again, feel free to pop those questions into the chat, and Coach Mark and I will do our best to answer that timely. Or you can unmute yourself, and you or someone, especially if you're there with a group, can ask your question.
Hello, can you hear me?
We can.
Okay, this is Wayne Castillo from the Edinburgh, Texas Financial Center.
Hello.
Yes, correct me if I'm wrong. in selection of the schools, would Cooter have those information if you have access to Cooter?
That's a great question. Thank you for asking that. Cooter does have a lot of information in there, and it does have snippets of information of a lot of that information on kind of your basics, on your entrance exams and the majors and things like that that are there. So that's a really great place. Thanks for bringing that up. That's a really great place to start the research from, and then go in and do. I always encourage students, if you're finding information on this site that has, a good amount of information on it, but it's really starter information, then go directly to the college or university website. But you're absolutely right. It's not necessary for them to go to all of the different colleges and universities, at least initially, to get that information. If it's something they're interested in, I always suggest that they kind of independently verify that with the college or university, either on the website or in person or on the phone with an admissions officer. But yes, great point that when you have access to Cooter, and students have that once they are enrolled in the program, they have access to Cooter, and that remains with them at least throughout the time in their program. They may also then have access to it after the program, but I'm not familiar with that piece of it. But so great question. Thank you very much. So we have a question on the chat line, and it's, if a student doesn't get into their first choice major, should they still consider the college with hopes of transferring? I'm going to give my best answer here and then also look to Coach Mark. It's going to depend a little bit. There's a lot of factors that are going to go into that, to be quite honest. And one is, if it's a school, let me preface it like this, that not all colleges and universities require students to, one, declare majors when they are applying, or to be accepted into a particular college within that college when they are applying. So that may not be a prerequisite. So if it is a prerequisite and the student is interested in that particular, maybe it's one of those niche majors that we talked about, or it's necessary for a student to be within a particular school within a college or university, and they are not accepted into that, that would be a conversation to have with the coach on what are some better alternatives. I can't say right now, yes, go ahead and maybe you can transfer later on, because we don't have all of the specifics. But I do think that there's a lot of pieces that are going to go into that. Again, when we're looking at applying to multiple schools, that's one of the reasons, because it's obviously not guaranteed that students are going to be accepted into all of the programs or all of the schools. So we want to make sure that they also have options. Coach Mark, that's a tough one.
All I can say is no. Here's what I found on that. How much work do you want to do? Can it be done? Well, yeah, but it would, and it would be nice to do something like that if all colleges were created equal, and all colleges had the same requirements, all colleges had the same classes, but they don't.
Right.
And then you can even further run into something that if a college is on a trimester system, in other words, 3 semesters a year versus 2 semesters a year, how much one class in a trimester is worth in transferring to a semester-based one. Oh, Lord. So, but I mean, can it be done? Yes, but you would have to know up front where you want to go. You'd have to feel pretty certain that after, that you could get into that other one. And then you'd want to talk to that second college that you're going to transfer to and say, what I'm taking here, are these classes going to not only transfer, but are they going to apply to this degree that I really want? So probably not the best way to do it, because I saw a lot of students break into tears in my academic advising office when they found out that their 3-credit-hour class only, their 5-credit-hour class on a trimester system only counted as 2.7 credits at a 3-credit because of the way it transferred. They found out that the class that they took that sounded really interesting doesn't even apply, to anything they have, and they've already filled up an appropriate amount of electives, and on and on and on and on. I mean, I could go on. So the easiest way to do it is to start and finish wherever that major is on it. And if that doesn't work initially, and I'm guessing when it says they doesn't get into their first choice major, I'm guessing their first choice college rather than first choice major on it. You can always do a community college. Community college is good because then you can get some base classes at a community college rather than college A that might be a private college. And then there's the whole thing of, does that first college that you do get into, is it regionally accredited versus nationally accredited? Because I've seen students go, what do you mean this doesn't count at all? Well, your college was a nationally accredited school, and we don't accept any credits from a nationally accredited school, only regionally accounted. Did I scare you yet? I hope not. But that's all the funky things going on. So there's my take.
Yeah, no, absolutely. There's a lot that goes into that. Couple of questions on here. One is from a consultant. So really quickly, welcome. We are glad that you are joining us. So a couple of things. We do parents' nights twice a month, the last Tuesday and Thursday of the month. So we'll be presenting the same content with obviously a different audience that will be there, but you will have both Coach Mark and I as your co-host coaches on that night. So we do those. And for any other trainings that you're looking for, specifically, Roger, you can find that in the U.S. Consultant Team site. It's got a calendar on there. And if you are curious where to find that or having any trouble getting into that, you can just send us an email and we'll make sure that you get that information. You're welcome. There are some presentations that are available in that site. This particular one is not it. We do record these. And so then the recordings are currently then made available to consultants to use. And so then we have one other question, because I am cognizant that we are coming up on time, but it's really about school ranking and how is the ranking determined, and finding out what a college ranking is and those types of things. Thank you. I see the last part of that as well. And so a lot of those, they're done kind of independently. The U.S. News and World Report are going to do some of that. I'm going to be perfectly honest and transparent that I am not overly familiar with the rankings of colleges and universities, and I will tell you why. One, it's of no interest to me how they're ranked, and this is just Megan personally. I've worked at public and private and have degrees from both in different areas of the country and all of that. And in the line of work that I have been in, I can tell you that regardless of what that ranking is, it's really about those factors that we were talking about. Does it have the academics that the student's looking for, and really what's that environment? So when it comes to rankings, that may be, and so I am not overly familiar with that. I probably could have stopped at that point, but wanted to, I don't know if you have any thoughts on that, Coach Mark, but my understanding of how those are done is dependent upon the source that is ranking.
Well, and you want to look at how does that ranking benefit the student.
Right.
I mean, that's really the bottom line. I mean, a lot of students are enamored with research colleges, and then I've heard other students say, well, yeah, but my teacher was always off doing his research, and we had some teaching assistant that came in, so the amount of time that we could pick his brain, and do employers look at that ranking? You know, I mean, I've been on different search committees in a college standpoint. I've been on search committees, you know, for new employees in a private setting. And it's, you know, we look at the person first. And then if they're a good candidate, then we might say, oh, and they went to Harvard, or they went to Yale, or they went to Notre Dame. That's not like, ooh, we better hire this person because they're from Notre Dame. You know, that's, you know, so some people feel, you know, I mean, and there have been different studies on that too. I've seen, you know, different studies on what does the ranking of a college do for a perspective, and it's sort of gone on both sides.
Yes. So that's kind of where we're at with that. We are 1 minute after the hour, but if there are any other questions that we can answer tonight, I would be happy to. Roger, I was replying to you, but I'm just going to tell you that we have a consultant training that happens the second and fourth Friday of every month. And so now that you're involved with, you know, being a new consultant, you should receive either a monthly email with that information, as well as a reminder potentially just a couple of days before. So we do, the parents' nights are the last Tuesday and Thursday of each month. Those typically fall within a week like this does. Sometimes it's a Thursday and Tuesday depending on the dates. And then we do consultant training. So our next consultant training will be, I believe it will be April 12th. And then it will be the 26th. So I think that those are the right dates. So yeah. Well, thank you all so very much for joining us this evening. What really brings these presentations to life, in addition to Coach Mark and I, of course, is really the questions that everyone brings to it, and the rich conversations that we're able to have, and seeing how that really affects our current and prospective families and consultants. So thank you all so much for choosing to be on. Coach Mark, thank you for being on this evening and adding all of your great wisdom. We certainly appreciate that. So again, we're going to present the same content, and obviously we'll have you know, just a different flair because it's a different day on Thursday, and that one will be at 6 p.m. Mountain Time. So for those of you doing any time zone gymnastics, it is now just a little after 8 o'clock out here in Colorado. And so we'll be doing that program at 6 p.m. on Thursday. Hope you all have a very great night, and we will see you next time. Thanks so much. Bye-bye.
Thank you. Bye-bye.